Alright, 4L60, 87 model, I believe. Alright, it's going to get an LS kit, 10 vein pump kit, the normal bushings, pump, case, both stators, the band, filter. This one's going to need a reverse input. This one's also going to need the input drum. This bearing blew up and just eat the crap out of this right here. These washers, if you get one that has a number 68 or 69, you can put a number 70 in there usually with no problem. It'll take up some of the slack that you end plays you get in there with no problems at all. And on your reverse input drums, there's two different ones. There's the later style, which has an aluminum piston. And there's the early style that has a steel piston, and the piston's smaller. And you can swap this drum out for the early one. And the early ones, look at that hole right there. See how that one's square? The early ones were round. They had a small hole. And when you swap this out, there's a possibility that you can end up with a harsh reverse engagement. Usually they don't complain about it, but if they do, this hole, this bleed hole that's in this piston, used to have you plug this off, and then this hole is a blind hole. I would have you drill this out to 62 or 63 thousandths, somewhere in there. This hole right here is 93, I believe. So you can, that's one thing that you can do if you end up with a harsh reverse and they complain about it. Another thing that likes to happen on these drums, I don't know if I can show it to you. I don't know how well it's going to show up on the camera. But you look right down here where the cushion plate likes to ride, likes to eat into the drum, and it eats in there far enough it can get hung up and you'll have a no reverse or a delayed reverse. So what I do, there's your cushion plate. You see how it's dished. In the factory it comes in with the dish up in the center. I just flip it over. They used to say that it would cause, I think they said it used to cause a harsh reverse, but I never got a harsh reverse out of it. I do this on all my 700s and my 4L60Es, and I've never had a problem. So I just flip it over and let you keep using the drum after it's been, you know, notched out like that. On your early 4L60 drums, this one here they sent me is a 4L60E early model, which you can swap out. But if you look at that hole down in there on the early 700 drums, earlier, see how that hole, I don't know if you can see it or not, how it's smooth all the way through. They had some that were mismachined that had a step in there. So you want to look in that hole and make sure it's smooth all the way through. The other thing that you need to be aware of, on the end of the drum here, this capsule, different capsules have different apply strengths for lockup. If you ever get somebody that took the ball out of here or took the whole capsule out, you're going to have an extremely aggressive lockup. Also, another thing to look out for is right down in here there's a cut plug. I have seen that cut plug come out before, and I've also seen this one come out before. You're going to have fourth gear, no third or fourth gear. That comes out of there. The other thing, this is an early 700 piston, 3/4 piston. It was aluminum and had all aluminum pistons in there. Now these forward pistons are bad about cracking, so a lot of people will take and put the molded pistons in there, and you can do that. You need to make sure and change the whole setup. You need the return spring. The return spring is set up for that. It's a different height. All this has to be changed as an assembly. This you can change out no matter what. But if you want to go to these molded pistons, you have to use this whole setup. The other thing is this number right here. This has got the 7 has thick steels that go in there. The earlier ones took this height here is taller, takes thinner steels. Alright, on the 700s, yeah, early and late output shaft. This is a late design. And 700 kits always came with this hard plastic seal that goes in the back of the input drum. This hard plastic can be used with any output shaft. The late design uses that soft rubber one that comes in the 4L60Es. You can't use that in the earlier output shaft where the hole was here, because it'll cut that seal and it'll give you lack of lube to your planets and make your planets burn up. So you can switch this output shaft with the soft seal, or you can use this hard plastic one in any of them, but don't get them mixed up. Alright, you got different backing plates, different thicknesses of steels, different thicknesses of pressure plates. And the way you know if you got it right, clearance come out right anyway. Look right down there where the pressure plate is. It's right even with that snap ring groove. That's about perfect. The other thing is on your input sprag. There's early and there's late. There's your sprag rotation. On the early ones, it didn't have this plate right here, and it used a thrust washer that went down on your planetary to hold that in all in place. My advice to you is, if you've got an early design sprag assembly, swap it out with the late style. They're much tougher, got more elements, and they take more abuse. Alright, got different setups for your 3/4 clutches and steels also. Different backing plates, different pressure plates, different thicknesses of the steels, different thicknesses of the clutches. You'll see how this comes out, how they had it before. I don't think it's going to be right. we have a mismatch of steels and stuff in here to try to make this come out right. We'll see where it ends up. Alright, looks pretty close. Try to do this one-handed. It's just a tad tight. I'm going to go find out what I need to do to make this just a little bit looser. It's just a little bit too tight. Alright. That's about where I like them. Might be just a tad bit tight, but I'm going to have it a little tighter than it should be than too loose. Okay, you can tell this is a auxiliary valve body unit or separator plate by all these extra holes down here. It takes the extra accumulator body down here. As far as the valve body goes, you can see the throttle valve returning back there. Somebody's already put in a return spring, so I don't need to worry about that. Super critical that this valve is super free. Another thing that we used to do back in the day, you can tell this is a real late model one because it don't have the lockup control valve here. We would put a hydraulic lockup valve in here so you didn't have to worry about lockup on it. It would automatically go in once it reached a certain speed, certain pressure. This one doesn't have it. You can't put it in there. Trying to find a valve body nowadays to do that, next to impossible, so it just won't get done. The late models don't take a check ball here. They take one here and here. You can see it don't take a check ball because it's now a square hole. It would be two holes like that if it took a ball. Also, it doesn't take one in the case where this goes because there's only one hole, so no ball in the case. I'll show you that later. The other thing is make sure you keep your valve body and separator plate, make sure it's a matched one. There's a lot of different holes for a lot of different style valves, and it's easy to get these mixed up and create all kinds of problems. So make sure you get a matched plate and valve body if you're going to swap them out. And if you're having a unit that's got weird problems, you're going to have to go find out which plate goes with which valve body and start looking at all the valves, because there's a bunch of different ones. While I'm thinking about it, there's two different drums depending on the early and late. You get early 700. This is 27 splines. This is a late one, so it's 29 splines. So if you get an early one, you call up your converter people and you tell them to send you an early one. Seems like all they do now is they grab the one that they're used to grabbing, which is the 29 spline. Your R&R guy's not going to look. He's just going to slap it in, and it's going to get all the way in, and the R&R guy's going to come back to you and go, it don't move. Well, it's because they didn't look at the torque converter, and nobody made sure that it was a 27 spline instead of a 29 spline. So you might want to, when it comes, if you get an early one that's 27 spline, you might want to go out there and double check the torque converter before they go start putting it in. Make sure it's the right one. Early models did not have the cushion plate here on the low reverse clutches. Early models had scarf cut rings made out of a different material, just like the reverse ones here. don't scarf cut these and try to use them. You're gonna use that, you don't have the resizing tool. Use the other style rings if you want to, but you can use these, just stretch them out, put them on there. Get you a hose clamp, put it on there, tighten it down, start at the bottom, tighten it down, let it sit a few minutes, move it up to the next one, let it sit a few minutes, move it up. Just keep doing that. Once you do that, take the pump stator, slide down over it, and let it sit there. Spin this pump around a little bit, and it'll seat these rings, and it'll hold them long enough. When you get ready to put the pump in, then take the pump off, stack your drums, and then put it on there if you don't have the tool. But don't scarf cut these rings. There's a number down in there, 553. It's a good one. 554s are bad. They're for V6s and they don't have much holding power. So always change those out for at least a 553. Might want to put a Corvette servo in. The other thing I've been running into, these aftermarket rebuilders, they're wanting to leave these return springs off. Put that return spring back on there. It keeps the servo pushed off of the band, keeps the band from dragging. Also, these are early servos had these two sealing rings that would go here. Put your servo in with your pump out. That allows you to look at the clearance on your band. Make sure it's nice and tight, especially if you're replacing this drum with one that's been machined down because it's been the band ate into it, because a lot of times these will be too small. They give you way too much clearance on your band. You can change out the pins on your band, or you can buy the Leavitt's Tech Pack, makes a extend-a-pin for them. Okay, on your pumps, you can tell this is an auxiliary valve body pump stator by that hole being there, and that's for that tube. Also, in the earlier models, this hole would have been smaller for the reverse drum. Another thing you want to look out for is on these valves. Somebody's already been in here and they got really radical here. You didn't need to shave this whole land off that was right here. You just grind a couple flats on it, would have been fine. But the other thing that you need to look out for is these two boost valves that are in here. Wouldn't be a bad idea to put a new spring on there also. But the main boost valve, let's see if we can get it up here, see it's 429 thousandths. Actually you make a 472. This one's not too bad. You don't want to go any smaller than that. You put the 472 in there. The next one up is 500 thousandths. That's mostly for just racing. But your reverse boost, you want to put one in that's 280, 290, somewhere in that range. You don't want the really small ones in there. And mostly you're going to run into that on your V6s. Be sure and check these, and you can order bigger ones for it. Be sure and put your seal retainer back on. The other thing, on these pump bodies, so this is number 732. This is the latest one that they put in before they went to the 4L60E. And the 732 has a recess machined in here so that the pump bushing couldn't walk out the front. The way we used to take care of that back in the day was we'd grind a couple notches in here, Loctite your bushing in, and stake it in those little spots there. Another thing with the earlier pumps is this hole. used to be really small. We'd drill that out to a 1/4 inch, and then these webs that were right here were all the way up, so the seal had a tendency to push out. Front seal has a tendency to push out anyway on a 4L60E, but this made it even worse. We'd take that same 1/4 inch drill bit and we'd drill so that those openings would be all the way around, just like this one is here, and let that fluid get around that seal and go back to the drain hole. There's differences in these. I think the 732, if I remember correctly, you can put it all the way back to 1985, if I remember correctly. Before that, there's differences in these castings where all these ports are, and the cup plugs and orifices and all that kind of stuff. So you gotta be careful swapping some of that stuff out. We're at the longer accumulator spring. This one goes into forward accumulator. Usually the thicker coil goes into 1-2. That one goes into 3-4. Of course, the stiffer the springs, the firmer the shifts. Make sure that check ball is in there. Here's your check ball locations in the case. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one gets left out if there's only one hole in the plate, not two. There's a big ball that used to go right here. Some of them still have it, some don't. If you put that in there and the cable's not adjusted properly, it's too loose or the cable breaks, that's a fail-safe. What it would do is it would unseat that ball, and it would cause extremely late shifts, raise the line pressure way high so you didn't burn your unit up. We always left them out. I think I left the radio on. Can't do that. YouTube gets all pissy. Make sure that cup plug's in there. Make sure you take that check ball out. Make sure you silicone where the wiring harness connector is going through the case. It's gonna leak. I'm gonna check the pins on your accumulators. Make sure that there's no wobble. There's hardly any at all. Change the accumulator depending on which one it is, what kind of problems you're going to have. There's a 1, 2, 2, 3 and a forward accumulator. These are your auxiliary valve body gaskets, non-auxiliary case, valve body side. Here's your valve body bolts. The really long one goes here, 2 short ones here, 8 goes there, 2 short ones go with that. This is usually a different color, and it's slightly shorter than the rest of these. It goes and holds that tube on right there. All the rest of these valve body bolts are the same. I'll show you where that one goes. These hold your lockup solenoid into the case. This is your other tube bracket. This is for the speedo. And the bolts for this end cover. You see you're going to have 4 bolts in there that have 8mm heads. The short one goes in right there. These 3 hold the cover on. Early model pumps had a 8-vein rotor. It's advisable to put the 10-vein in it. You want the hardened rings anyway, and it's much more stable pressure, and they're not as prone to breaking in half. On your pump gaskets, if you look here, you see the difference. This is the early pump gasket. This is the late one. It's got this extra web here. Now they say if you put this early pump gasket on a late pump, it's going to leak out the vent. I don't know if that's true. I've done it. It doesn't. I've never had one leak, but that's what they say. But you can put this gasket on any of them. So I don't understand why they even still put this in the kit. Alright, you line up bolts. Line that all up. Note the V for the valve body gasket facing the valve body. And that's forward accumulator, 1-2 accumulator on. Okay, this is where that little plate goes. This bracket goes here. This little wire goes on the little trap here, like that, to the inside. Believe it or not, it makes a difference. Put your detent on before you put your tube on, makes it easier. Tubes in, bracket, bracket. If you don't have the bracket that holds this cap on, leave the O-ring off, silicone it. I don't know if you can see how much play that has, just barely. That's where you want it. If you push this back and forth and it's moving quite a bit, just ding the end of the cap in here until you get about that much play. If that governor moves back too far, it'll stop you from getting passing gear. So